some people are joining us. A warm welcome. A warm welcome to the session.
Okay, I think.
Okay, let's start. We're already over our schedule. A warm welcome from our side. We're so happy to be here. We're happy that we were invited by Ton. Thanks a lot. I think this is brilliant to have this PKM summit here in beautiful Utrecht, where we can exchange ideas. A European version of a PKM summit, super exciting for us. Super nice to be here. We want to share some ideas that we have been working on lately, and it's about good ideas, bad ideas, and the things in between about personal knowledge management. So, who is we? Here you can see the NoteLab team, which consists of David Lohner. Would you like to present yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm David. I'm an educational scientist at a German university, the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. And I used to work in higher education for media production. So I do online courses, I produce online courses. And at the moment, I'm trying to write down my dissertation project. And that's why I'm into PKM.
And I'm Stefan Siegel. I'm a postdoc researcher in education at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. My main focus are sustainability education, educational media such as learning videos. I am also a lecturer, and we found each other to found NoteLab. Would you like to tell us more about this thing?
Yeah, and NoteLab is basically a website where we conduct our activities around writing and blogging stuff on personal knowledge management or giving workshops for students and teachers as well. And our aim is to provide teachers and researchers and students, so all kinds of people at higher education institutions, with empirically based strategies to organize their digital stuff, to write smart notes and to link them together in order to pursue their learning and professional goals.
Yeah. What is TKM? You all probably know about PKM. As we do workshops for teachers mainly and write for them, we came up with a working definition for us. We would consider TKM as a whole bunch of a whole repertoire of practices related to identifying, creating, further developing, and disseminating scientific knowledge, but also other knowledge. It's basically about managing our digital stuff, if we would refer to Bergman and Whittaker from MIT, or it's about extending our cognitions at teachers, if you go for building a second brain, as Tiago Forte does, or to build a Zettelkasten, a treasure trove of knowledge, if you want to go back to Luhmann. And for us, it's about treating the resource information, the resource knowledge in a good way.
And as we said, we're both teachers at higher education institutions, and we observed that many, if not all students, keep loads of PDF files and Word documents in specific folders based on their subjects they're studying. So they're putting those files into silos and can relate to them, but they don't link in them, or if it comes to the end of their courses, if they have to write an essay, many of them struggle to connect things from one subject to things from another subject. And as they graduate, some of them, and two of them stand in front of you, switch sides and become teachers. And they still hold to these practices of storing information in folders, which has some advantages. For example, if you have to hand some things over to a colleague or put it in a shared folder, their folders are great for. But there are many drawbacks. And we are looking forward to use PKM strategies in order to help students to learn better, to work better, and to help teachers to organize their preparing for teaching better, to be more efficient, to be faster even, maybe. And so these are things that we like to discuss with students and our colleagues. And we came across some beliefs that many people ask us, why should I do this? I think I have the idea of how I know what it's like or what I should do with my files and knowledge and stuff. But we came across some common potential misconceptions on this topic.
Of course, myth is a very absolute term. Sometimes it's not either a fact or a myth, so sometimes it's at least questionable. So we stumbled upon those. Maybe you're familiar with some of them. We have to say, although we know now about them, we tend to fall into those myths. And what's the problem with that? These myths can have various sources and also various causes. For instance, cognitive biases or fallacies that lead to them. They can be very sticky because they're often very simple statements, and they can do damage. Damage in a sense that they can either hinder engaging in effective knowledge strategies or engaging at all in knowledge management with, for instance, tools for thought. So we don't have time to go onto all of these, and there are many, many, many more. So we've selected 3 myths that we will do a brief rundown.
Yeah, and maybe you've come across of these. Myth number 1 is knowledge management is dead. I can simply Google it or ask ChatGPT, and I'm sure many of you came across people who think like this. So we'll see in a moment what's behind this myth. The second one is, I don't have time for knowledge management. I have so many other tasks and objectives I try to follow. I simply don't have time to do this on top of everything else I'm doing in higher education. And the third myth we're trying to debunk today is the more I save, the more I know. And I'm sure many of you know this. Stefan,
it's me as well.
Commits guilty. Who else does collect many things?
I confess.
All right. So, okay, let's start with the first one.
So this one is basically a classic myth in education. It's coming back and back. It could be considered a zombie concept. It's also a shapeshifter. Once search engines came about to be there in the world, people said, I don't need to know anything. I can just look it up. Yeah? Now with AI tools, the powerful AI tools we have, like ChatGPT, you could say, why should I store knowledge? Why should I save notes, etc., when I can just generate with a few clicks information, so to speak, knowledge. Yeah? The problem, however, is that, as Nicomaido said in the session earlier this day, this information that you get as an output is not necessarily incorporated knowledge, processed knowledge. It's not actively processed, so this often leads to inert knowledge, so knowledge that you can't put to action, and it sometimes leads to a false sense of knowing. Often the outputs from AI tools sound very plausible, sound very eloquent, but sometimes they contain faulty ideas, bullshit sometimes even, and you need prior knowledge to evaluate what this output says. You also need prior knowledge to search for things. You need prior knowledge to fuel the AI so that you can have better results. So this often leads to an illusion of competence because you can easily get this output. And what works instead? I've stumbled across this nice T-shirt. Thinking is like Googling, just more awesome, which I believe in. That's the fact. If you really engage with the material you find, we know this from educational psychology, there are more or less effective learning strategies. And for instance, if you elaborate on your thoughts, if you link them to other things, that's where learning happens. That's where you change your knowledge structures in your head. If you just consume passively stuff, that doesn't necessarily lead to deeper learning. So I think thinking about and linking your thinking, this is the main part of knowledge knowledge management if you want to do it in an effective, sustainable way. It's not about the tools, it's not about other stuff, it's really about thinking hard about this. The true core, of course, in this myth might be that people who store information, who accumulate knowledge in a certain area, might be better able to use and leverage these tools such as search engines and AI. So it's kind of a nuanced approach is necessary. It's not entirely a myth or a fact, but I tend to rather say it's a myth at this point. Next one, please.
All right, the second one, I don't have time for that. We all know that, especially in academia, researchers and teachers have so many tasks. They have to read scientific articles, they have to publish them if they have written them. They have to do teaching, they have to correct all the tests. So the problem, nobody got time for that. This is everywhere in academia, in higher education. And the consequences is that many teachers are like this cyclist. They try to move with square wheels. And as you all guess, probably right, this is not very efficient. And also, there's this misunderstanding then that PKM or TKM even more is another additional task that teachers have to accomplish. But it's not. It's more like if you have this round wheel, you propel yourself even faster if you do so. And especially in German academia, teaching is considered as not really important, because if you want to be successful as a researcher or a scientist, you have to publish articles, as many as in a short time as possible. So teaching is like an unwanted child, if you like so. And that's a problem where this comes into play. So nobody wants to do additional work for teaching because they don't see any benefits in it. But every year they prepare for the same course, they do the same thing over and over again, and this takes time as well. Maybe even more, as if they would have put that time into a somewhat elaborate TKM system. And that's the thing that works instead. Even a small step, like here on the staircase, brings you one step further, one step more, higher up, and you can do this step by step. And even a small step is one step forward. If you feel confident, you can take the bigger steps, the higher stairs, but you should never go down or take a rest, because you want to reach the next floor. And after that floor, maybe there's another one. And if you put even some effort into creating a teaching-related knowledge management system, you will benefit from it. But also there is a true core. If you overcomplicate stuff, you happen to spend way too much time into integrating different tools, chasing the new shiny thing each and every time a new thing comes along. And I do confess, I am sometimes here in the middle of this graphic, but most of the most brilliant teachers, they use a simple tool like Apple Notes. Or maybe some students who are at the very low end, but also are also very successful, they don't even think about all those possibilities with Obsidian or Notion or all these other tools mentioned here in this graphic. They simply use what they have available. And if it's a pen and a paper, so if it works, it works. So that's the second myth. Spend your time wisely.
Yeah. And don't sophisticatedly procrastinate on finding the best workflow and the best tools. Let's do another one. I'm not sure if my presenter... now it works. Also, I here confess I regularly fall for this myth, although I know about it. It's very hard to not engage in this. The more I save, the more I know. It's very natural. It comes very easy. The problem, however, is that if you accumulate all those materials, for instance, downloading papers that are something interesting or sound a little bit interesting, you get this whole pile of unread papers, the curse of Syndeku, or the collector's fallacy, also known, that you sometimes lose track of what you've downloaded and what you've already got. And when you go back to your pile of papers, you often find, oh, I've got already quite a lot there. This leads often to that you have overchoice, that you have abundance, the paradox of overchoice. You're paralyzed kind of by all the materials you've got. If you want to create something, you just can't do it because it's all too much. And I think what works here is to capture content very deliberately, to critically ignore stuff. So to be very mindful about what to include in your Ideaverse, in your PKMS, to then start working on those nodes, to go from those seeds to maybe plants, to trees, to the forest, to this whole ecosystem, and to summarize those nodes, because that makes them actionable, and it makes them also, you can also share them with others. If it's this whole mess, it's not so easy to engage in these things. Of course, there's a true core in this myth as well. If you want to become an expert in a certain area, no? If you want to accumulate, you have to accumulate knowledge in a certain domain, in a discipline. That includes building a treasure trove, settle custom, which grows over time. And this is fine, but I imagine it sometimes like a house. It can stand on where it's a very sandy ground that is not solid. If you put too much weight on the house, then it falls into each other. Or if you build a solid structure, a good foundation, then you can build a really good and great palace for your mind, so to speak. And so here also we have to consider both sides. I alluded to that before, when we speak about myths about knowledge management, sometimes it's not either or. Sometimes there's a huge gray zone in between. But if there is good evidence available that speaks against a certain myth, then I also would put it in this category myth, because then it's justified. No? So, but in our research, we tend to be more careful. There we speak about questionable beliefs. So this is a bit more open to debate, and it requires like a closer look and a proper investigation. That's for me very important always.
All right. Now, these were 3 myths, and that's us. Because even we fall for these myths every now and then, and regularly. But as this monkey, we have a mirror. We talk to each other. We reflect on our own misconceptions, on our own practices. And that helps. So maybe for these 3 myths we presented to you, I try to read a lot of stuff. So every time I see a new paper online, I save it to my Zotero library. Collector's fallacy. I know I won't have time for reading all of that stuff. So I look out for shiny new things like AI tools that integrate with my Zotero in order to leverage all the information in these papers. Shiny new things. But I said it already, I don't have time for that. Or at least I say I don't have time. Because, to be honest, I would have time if I would consider this very important. But there's other stuff. So that's me, and that's maybe Stefan too. So even we, the scientists, the specialists, we are facing this interdisciplinary junction. Biologists or computer scientists who are not into this educational psychology field, they struggle with these topics as well. And we know changing one's fundamental views is very, very hard. And we find it that talking about it and reflecting on it is the best strategy we came across yet to handle this, or to cope with this. And we observe that many teachers, as well as we, fall for these myths we presented to you. And we're trying our very best to help them as well as we help us, each others.
So also self-help. And by doing that, or we're trying to do that by looking for the best available evidence that is out there, for instance, in the fields of writing education, media education, but also educational psychology, to gather that and then to try to find effective ways to deal with knowledge and to use these insights to help others. And that's basically our mission at NoteLab.
Yeah, we're developing ideas through evidence-informed note-making. So we're using both, as mentioned, Obsidian as our tool of choice for dealing with our thoughts. And we're developing ideas how other people can also do that. And we share this knowledge. And we share this by publishing blog posts and at our newly blog. It's at the end of December we started this blog, so it's very, very new. And of course, due to the fact that we are scientists, we also write academic articles for journals in academia. We're giving talks at conferences, just like today, or even at other scientific conferences. And we're giving workshops for students and teachers as well, to show them our strategies, to show them the evidence we found in order to debunk these myths.
But also to learn from them. That's always important, as like said this morning, a lot of times the exchange is the valuable thing that experts can learn from novices and the other way around.
And this part, the learning, that's missing from this slide because that's not the topic today.
Yeah, today was kind of more a talk. Tomorrow we will have a workshop where we can really engage with you and discuss maybe these questionable beliefs, but also others that you might have, that you have noticed when you work with others. We would really love to engage your swarm intelligence, to come up with good ideas, bad ideas, and the things in between about knowledge management. And we would be very happy to see you there. It will be more interactive than what we did today.
All right. So, thanks for joining us today. Our door to our NoteLab is open for you to ask questions. Feel free to reach out to us now during the PKM Summit and especially tomorrow during the other workshop. And now it is your time. Do you have anything to add to this talk?
I have a question about the dealing with the younger generations, because we are talking about teachers and students. And from what I know is that in general, younger generations, defined as born after 1993, have worse information skills than older generations in general, like being selective, being critical, about dealing with information. How does that impact this in the future? Well, knowledge management in 50 years from now will be more difficult.
All right, I have to rephrase the question because the microphone is... So you asked how younger generations, which are said to be less skilled in information management or dealing with information, how they manage their information, maybe in 50 years. So
well, how does it impact knowledge management, the exchange? Because the teachers are generally older. Mm-hmm. How does that affect them?
Okay, so as teachers, I think it's our mission and our profession to lead younger persons away. We can show them a door, but to speak with I think it's from Matrix, 1999, they have to go through it themselves. So the best we can do is we can reach out our hand to them and show them what to do, but they have to understand by themselves that this is important.
Yeah. Sometimes you hear the other, you hear it the other way around. You say, the youngs are the digital natives. They are way better in dealing with digital tools for thought. However, I think when it comes to personal knowledge management, a lot has to do with metacognition. Everything stands and falls with it. It's highly, it's not easy. So you have, it doesn't come naturally, it doesn't come automatically. You really have to train certain skills there to evaluate certain information that is on the internet. For instance, the World Economic Forum said that we're living in times where misinformation is a huge, huge problem. So this skill of critically ignoring stuff, of critically evaluating stuff, deliberately evaluating stuff is highly important, but also like how to write. So sometimes we come also from a writing didactics perspective, writing education perspective, and there are strategies for creative writing, there are strategies for very structured writing. If you know about them, you can leverage them to your needs and to your goals. I think sometimes we're in like a hamster wheel and just write stuff up, but we should always be mindful about what do we want to achieve with our knowledge management, with our, what is our PKMS for, our personal knowledge management system. I think this is the crucial part. 2 questions. Who was first? I'm not sure.
Both at the same time. You can go first.
Maybe Sabine?
I'd be interested to know, like, what is your end game? Are you hoping to stay within academia and teach teachers in academia? Or is your goal maybe something like influence of curriculum management? Because when I looked at your slide about students and how they put everything forward, I recognized myself from 20 years ago, but I also realized like this is what we're taught to do in primary school, right? But unless you go to a Steiner school or something, and this is true in many countries, not just Germany, like I went to school in Germany, taught in Germany at school, taught in the UK at various schools, and it's always the same. Every teacher has their own folders, their own requirements for what kind of paper you're supposed to use. What
Absolutely.
It's bonkers, really. And then we keep doing this for academia, but also in companies where like we heard in a different workshop this morning, teams don't share the information. So is there something that we need to fix way sooner? Like when kids first go to school, like where do you see the problem basically starting?
Would you like? It's a very big question.
Tough question.
We're working mainly with adults. So I work with students, business economic students, but also teachers from all disciplines. So I'm usually not do work with young children, which would be very important. For me, it's about making them aware of their goals and then telling them about what choices they have with regard to tools, methods of knowledge management, so they can choose according to their goal, according to the corresponding task, according to the corresponding topic, which tool is the appropriate one. And then also to give them or let them develop competencies in using those tools, because I think a fool with a tool is still a fool. Yeah? So you need ways to know how to effectively use the tools. So that would be my take on that. I'm not sure if it fully answers your question.
Maybe I might add a more optimistic twist to this, because when I look around this room, I would guess that each and every one of us is raised in with the knowledge that we can put files in folders.
Absolutely.
But if you take your iPad, for instance, you don't have access to the file system. And especially young people who grow up with these new technologies, maybe they've come up with new solutions for these kind of problems, because they don't know what's a folder. They don't know that every app or every program on a computer can access the same folders. They learn on my iPhone what is in Apple Notes is in Apple Notes. What's in Google Keep is in Google Keep. Maybe some other app can access these notes, but Normally, they don't. So they have to work out some things how to deal with these kinds of apps and software tools. So maybe we can learn from the younger generation here.
I think you had a question as well.
Question, I was wondering.
Well, our basic aim is to learn more about ourselves, but also to learn about how others perceive knowledge management. Sorry.
Yeah, my question was basically about that. So what is the use case or the use cases that you have in mind? Because as you were sharing also in higher education, it sounded more like this is a process for people to do research and write. And although I think that is for most knowledge workers, that is the thing. But for example, if you're a programmer, you want to have also stuff here. So it's
Absolutely.
all about learning and internalizing knowledge or meta-cognitive skills, like how do you work through a problem, how do you break it down. So I'm really curious to see where this goes, and I think also PPM, often there's a lot of focus on tools and not so much on workflows or processes. So yeah, we'll definitely follow this more closely.
So what we observe is that, especially if we give workshops to students, that they are eager to learn these tools like Notion or Obsidian, where they can link notes together, that they don't have to put stuff in one silo, in one folder. And the goals they pursue is that they want to connect knowledge from one domain with knowledge from another domain, because these generalists are more important today. You don't need, of course you need specialists sometimes, but since we're living in a world that is highly volatile, you know, this VUCA world, we also need people that can switch between domains and can connect the dots between different parts of their knowledge.
So systems thinking competence.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is especially important regarding sustainability and the grand challenges we face.
Maybe we should add that to our
Great.
workshop.
I think you raised your hand, and you. Let's start with you.
Just a very short remark concerning the youngest generation. I think the best foundations for knowledge management in children are not laid with the fingers on a touch screen or on a keyboard, but with the fingers in the mud.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe we can discuss this in tomorrow's session, whether this is a myth or a fact or something in between, because there are huge controversies between digital versus analog note-taking. We also had it in the session before. There are advantages and disadvantages.
From my experience, you should try to take all the technology away, because technology often is the answer. And in technology, if you give technology as an answer, there is a lot in it. And you're always confusing what do you really mean. If you think about if you set a set of rules to play a game and taking technology away, then you come back to the systemic thinking of people, because they don't do technology as a solution. We use too often technology as a solution or as a problem. Speculative design is what it was. So eventually to start talking with these, because we say we want to talk with people, we want to learn from the feedback and everything, try as an exercise to do the same thing without taking technology in the whole equation.
I think that's a super cool idea, sometimes to shut off the PowerPoint presentation and just do a workshop, for instance, on yourself. I'm not sure about the fact whether we should ban all the tools. So they can be very powerful, but it depends, of course, how you use them. If you use them mindfully, if you use them intentionally.
I'm not saying that you have to ban the tools. In your research, you could try to do experiments without taking the tools in consideration. When I say we have to create a digital office to my clients, they say we have Teams. That's not the answer.
No.
But they use technology as an answer, and that's the problem.
I go with you, but I want to add that technology often allows us to achieve new goals that we haven't thought of without the technology. For example, if you have a bicycle and you go to the bakery every morning to get your breakfast, that's totally fine. But if you have a helicopter, maybe you would go to another city for breakfast. You wouldn't have come up with that idea if you only had the bicycle.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. So,
it's an electronic helicopter.
but it's nice. But that was the thing I tried to say. It's about deliberately using those tools and those technologies, and to be aware of maybe unintended consequences that using a helicopter for getting your breakfast might have.
But you get that kind of talks with people which are very skilled in the technology. The moment they're not, and 99% of people are not,
Absolutely.
you cannot make those kind of discussions.
True, I would agree. I'm not sure who raised their hand, but it's lovely to see that there are so many resonance. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what are you learning from your students? Because that's a totally different generation. How is it changing your view on note-taking?
For me, what is very interesting is that we deal in our workshop with students from all different kinds of disciplines. So we have computer sciences students, we have students from social sciences or humanities, and sometimes I wouldn't classify them into those categories because I'm always very careful to avoid typologies. But it's interesting to see that they have a very different approach sometimes to knowledge management. For instance, the computer sciences guys, they often go more towards the technology and come from that perspective, and this is also quite okay and useful, whereas humanities people think more about the concepts behind the tools. But I don't want to partialize and to generalize because that's not fair, but that's a kind of learning that I get from them.
Another thing I want to add is I learned from students that they often come up with solutions with tools that are not built for that solution.
Yeah.
So we, in our workshops, we go in and say, here is one software piece, it's named Obsidian, maybe some of you know it, and that's our working tool because we think it's a very great tool, but sometimes there are students who do everything for their courses in Canva. So I recently came across one student who organized her learning stuff in a Canva whiteboard. So in my world, in my recognition, Canva is a graphics design tool. You use it for creating slides, for creating infographics, for social media content, but not for learning, and not for presenting or documenting and stuff you learned at university. But she does that. And that's very interesting, and that opens up my mind to how can I maybe use my tools in a totally different way.
Yeah. Or another anecdote from our last course at University of St. Gallen. We had a participant who didn't use the Obsidian publish feature to publish his Volt, but instead went to GitHub, to the repository, and used basically GitHub to publish his notes, which is very clever, but not in the intention of the builders of Obsidian. I think you had a question as well.
Thank you. Very similar to you. What are the effects you see by getting teachers to adopt a more PTM system to their teaching? Maybe perhaps your own experiences, do their classes improve, do results improve, anything like that?
We haven't conducted research about that. Like, we don't have empirical solid data about that, but from my experience, I become more fluent in the topics I teach. I have a safety net to fall back on. So if someone asks me a question, I could stand here, go into my Vault and look things up. So it's kind of, for me, it gives me safety. I also try to see, or tend to see, that I accumulate well-linked expert knowledge on certain areas. So I believe that I can more quickly compile materials for a session. So that's a benefit, but that's highly anecdotal. I think that you can justify it by theoretical claims or evidence that is already out there, but that's what I see from myself.
The old professor did something for years in the past, and now with the knowledge of tools like Obsidian, they come up with new ideas. So like, oh, we could create our own Wikipedia for our subject with this tool and share it with only our students. And this is way, way less complicated than the actual Wikimedia software Wikipedia uses. And so we are opening their minds for new solutions or for new ways to solve problems they have on their side. So that's an effect we see, anecdotal, not evidence informed yet, but we're working on that part. Oh, I guess we have to.
Oh, we've run out of time.
Yeah, well, it's time. Thank you guys so much. You can
Thank you.
continue in 15 minutes. We got the next sessions going on. So find your ways to the right rooms that you want to be in, or stay here, whatever you like.
Thank you.
Thanks for your great ideas and questions.